Emily Kline and Mary Berg are Extension Livestock Environmental Management Specialists at Carrington. Their primary responsibility is to support livestock producers with information and education to implement nutrient management practices to reduce surface and groundwater contamination and more efficiently utilize manure nutrients. They want to help you successfully operate and maintain your livestock manure systems, make on-farm site visits. Emily grew up in St. Anthony, North Dakota on a diversified farm and ranch. She and her husband Matt have a purebred simmental operation near Hertzfield. She's an undergraduate degree in ag education at North Dakota State and is working towards her master's degree. First on the docket, however, is Mary Berg, who grew up on a commercial cow-calf operation near Driscoll, North Dakota. She has a master's degree in animal science from the University of Wisconsin at Madison a year ago and a bachelor's degree from North Dakota State. So, Mary?
So we've talked a lot this morning about what goes in the animal, about nutrition and all that jazz, which is really important. We care about what comes out, and I think that producers should too. How many here use their manure as fertilizer? And so how many of you sample your manure to know what's in it? How much nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium? So that's part of our programs. We run around and we take manure samples and we send them in and tell you guys how much nutrients are in your manure. And we do that for free. Another part of what we do is composting, which I think is why the guy stopped right here in front of our lovely manure and compost piles. During my speech and during Emily's talk, I invite you to get off the trailer, run around and look at our compost piles. We have them marked as to what was turned and what wasn't, how many turns they've had, and I also have some temps with me. But basically we're going to start off with the why. Why should we compost? What are the benefits? Okay, so one of the benefits is added fertility, because we just said that we use it as fertilizer. Increased water holding capacity. Also composting, because it's a heating process, will reduce the amount of weed seeds. And if you do get it up to a certain temperature, it should reduce all the weed seeds that are in your compost. Is also, if we get it up to certain temperatures, it should kill all of our bacteria that are in there. And that's especially important for people who are using it in their gardens and are going to have their fruit come in contact with the soil. Now, whether we use manure, compost, heat moss, it doesn't matter. We should always wash our vegetables. But the added benefit of compost is that most of the bacteria should be dead. All right, so the first thing we have to talk about with composting is site selection. How many of you guys compost on your farms? So site selection is very important. There will be some leaching from these compost piles during the process. If it rains, there's going to be some water around there. We don't want that concentrated nutrients to just drain off anywhere. And so you want to make sure that you have the proper soil underneath. Clay liner is the best, or if you have a cement bunker that you're composting on, or we have several containment ponds around here. And so we could just make sure that our compost drains into our containment pond. And that would be fine too, because we're containing all those concentrated nutrients. We have to talk about the ratio of carbon to nitrogen. So in our compost piles behind me, what's going to be the carbon source? Straw. Yep, in here it's straw, corn stalks. That's going to be the carbon source. And then the nitrogen source, of course, is the manure. So we want a carbon to nitrogen ratio of about 30 to 1. 30 to 1 will give us a bacterial compost, versus if it's the other way around, if you have a higher nitrogen to carbon ratio or a more equal ratio, it's going to be more of a fungal compost, which is going to be slower. The bacterial compost is a little faster. We like the faster process, and so we do the 30 to 1 carbon to nitrogen ratio. After that, we talk about piling. So you can see here that we have these piles in kind of a dome shaped, and so that's to allow proper airflow through the pile, because you need a certain amount of air to go through the air when we turn it. The air allows the microbes to go back to work and start heating again. So what is composting? What happens? What makes compost different from just fresh manure? So the nitrogen is changed, it changes forms. So if you have regular manure, you go out and spread it, it has to mineralize. So it has to go from the organic form to the inorganic or available form. Whereas when we compost, we're taking the nitrogen from the inorganic form and making it organic. So we're changing the availability with hopes of reducing any leaching into the environment. And so that also changes the availability then when you go out and spread it as a fertilizer. If you're spreading fresh manure as a fertilizer, we say that the nitrogen is about 50% available in fresh beef manure. The phosphorus is about 80%, and the potassium is about 90%. So if we have compost, the phosphorus and potassium pretty much stay the same, but the nitrogen availability changes to about 20%, because the bacteria then, or the microbes, have to go through and remineralize that nitrogen to make it available. So there are some differences between fresh manure and compost. After that, we take our temperatures. Temperature is important to know because we want to know if we're killing the bacteria, if we're killing the weed seeds, if we're heating it up properly. It's especially important in organic composting. If you are trying to be certified organic composting, it has to be a certain temp for a certain amount of days. And so those guidelines are all found either in our bulletin here. The bulletin is available up in the front. I just didn't bring any down here. Basically, everything I'm telling you is coming straight out here today. So if you do have any questions or think I missed something, you can sort of go look at this bulletin here that's at the center. Okay, so we've temped it, we've turned it, we turn it, comes up to about 130 degrees. After about 2 weeks, the temperature goes down to probably 100. So we go and turn it again. Temp comes up again to about 130 to 140 degrees, stays there for a week, drops back down, and we turn it again. Then the last time we turn it, the temperature doesn't come back up. That means the bacteria are done. They're done converting the nitrogen, but we don't automatically go spread it. We let it sit there for a while and cure for about 2 weeks. That way, just to make sure that if we did, temp it in the wrong spot or anything is going on, we can just finish. The bacteria can calm down, and then you can go spread it, and it's ready to use. And of course, before we go spread it, we want to sample it to make sure that we do know what's in there. So, questions about composting manure. A certain percentage of moisture is the question. I'm not exactly sure on the percentage of moisture, but yes, moisture content is very important. So what we do is called a wet rag test. Put on a pair of gloves. You don't have to if you don't want to, but that's what I prefer. Walk over there and just grab, you don't want to take off the top, that's always going to be the driest. So pull off the top crust, reach in there, and give it a squeeze. If there's water running out, it's too wet. If it crumbles and it's like the top crust, it's too dry. But if it kind of stays together like a neat little ball, it's about right. And that's the right water content. Yep.
So Mary, optimum moisture content for composting is like around 50 to 60%, that is the optimum. The other thing is like if you do in a windrow, because you are always having some precipitation, it will add up. But if you do it under the shade, sometimes you need to spray water because as heating is going up, it will lose some moisture. So that's why you need to add or spray some water to compensate that one. But if you do outside, then you are fine.
Thanks, Shafi.
We're generally thinking about looking at the possibilities of commercially doing this and what might work for farmers to try start selling 50-pound bags of this stuff. And that'd be a good project for you guys. Because I think of the time you got, the equipment you got, if you added all that stuff up and got yourself a bagger, can you make a living with this stuff?
I think you can make a living with this stuff. I know there's some dairy farmers over by Center, I believe the Center, Stanton area, that have made a living with just composting and selling the compost. It's a really easy process. It doesn't take a lot. I do have to thank Dale and Tim and Tyler for whenever we come down and say, hey, can you turn the compost pile with like a minute's notice? They run out and do it for us right away, and we certainly do appreciate that. But it is pretty simple. They hook the tractor up, hook it up to the turner, drive through there, and then they're done. And so the only laborious part is if you do have to add water. And so there are a few management things, but really in the grand scheme of things, pretty simple process. We do have, so like I said, down here is just a stockpiled manure for now, way down at the south end. And then on this side, the turner, we had the guys turn this yesterday for the first time. So this is a one-turn compost. On the west side, that's been turned 2 times. And then in the bucket there is a completed compost, and that's probably been turned about 5 times. So if you want to get off and go and look at the different textures, content, I do have some nutrient analysis from that in my folder here. Certainly come with me over there and you can ask me questions and we'll walk through them. Otherwise, I think with that, I will turn it over to Emily. And Emily's going to talk to you about the dollar value of manure and using it in your cropping systems and whole farm nutrient balance.
So a little bit about manure. When I started with Extension, I was told there aren't too many new ideas. There's just a lot of old ones that are recycled. So nothing groundbreaking here today, but manure was the main fertilizer for many years until around the 40s. Technology allowed us to mine and make commercial fertilizers. They were much more manageable. They also were more cost effective at the time. And now today the value of manure has kind of been put to the wayside or forgotten, but recently in our state we're seeing a growth in feedlots, and there's been more of an interest in what the value of manure is, using that as a fertilizer. Here at CREC, we've done some studies on manure use in crops. I don't have time to go into too much detail, but I encourage you to check out our reports and contact one of us if you have more questions. In 2008-2009, a study was done on nitrogen application in spring wheat with manure, fall versus spring, and then also with urea. Keep in mind, 2008 and 2009 weren't the greatest growing seasons for us. What resulted was a fall application of manure resulted in 45 bushels per acre with a 14.5% protein, and the urea was 48 bushels per acre with a 15.3% protein. So not a huge significant difference there. It's also found that the spring applied manure did not provide enough nitrogen right away in the spring for crops that needed that. So what we recommend is you use manure, do a fall application. Not a perfect world. If a spring application is the only option, make sure you're soil testing, and you may want to add some commercial fertilizer in there right away. They also did a nitrogen analysis for the cost in that study. The urea came to the bill was 4 times more that for the nitrogen than for the manure. The urea was about $67 per acre, whereas the manure was only about $16 per acre, and that's just the cost analysis of that nitrogen in there. And again, that urea only provided a 3 bushel increase over the manure. Besides the value of nitrogen, manure is also a fertility package. It's going to add organic matter, fertility, it's going to prevent erosion, your soil is going to hold more moisture, and there's going to be more microbes in your soil, other benefits of that. Back to the value though, Mary and I have had a lot of questions this year on what is my manure worth. I wish we could just come up with a spreadsheet that said X amount of dollars and here you go. Rachel has a handout if you guys want to take a look at that. We sat down and figured out a few numbers. We figured out two animals on there. If you look at the 650-pound steer, for a 75-day feeding period, you're going to come up with about 22, 10, 17 for your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. If you look at the dollar amounts, $12, $4, about $6 comes out to about $22 for your NPK. Doesn't seem like a whole lot. If you start multiplying that up though, if you have 500 head, you're looking at a little over $11,000. So just to look at that dollar amount, that's the average we came up with. Also keep in mind it's going to depend on your animal, the species, the feed, the application method, the application rates, if it's liquid, dry, and so on. But that's just kind of just to give an example for that. Besides the dollar amount, to really get the best economic value out of using manure or compost comes down to your nutrient management or using proper management practices. Make sure you're soil testing, manure testing. Also knowing what your crop nutrient needs are. You're spending money on nutrients, whether it's manure or whether it is a commercial fertilizer, you're bringing that onto your operation. You pay for these nutrients that come into your operation, whether as a commercial fertilizer or if you're purchasing manure, if you're purchasing hay, feed for cattle, but it stays on that operation. If you guys take a look here, it is a full circle. Either way, you're going to lose nutrients, but if you're a good nutrient manager, you're going to get the best bang for your buck, I guess you could say. That brings me to another part of what Mary and I do. Besides the dollar amount, it's also important environmentally. We start losing nutrients, whether it's runoff, leaching, containment pond management, or just poor overall nutrient management. We run into environmental issues. Our neighboring states right now are very heavily regulated. They have a lot of issues. Some places, every truckload of manure that leaves a farmstead has a paper trail. We are fortunate right now in our state that we are not as heavily regulated yet. Don't get me wrong, there are rules and regulations, but we are very fortunate here as compared to, for example, Minnesota. If you ever get a chance to talk to a feedlot or a producer over there, it's from the past year I've learned it's quite an eye-opening experience as far as that goes. To help you guys be better managers, Mary mentioned we do have the manure managing program, so please don't hesitate. I'll enforce that again. Don't hesitate to call us. We'd love to come out, see what you have going on, or just a visit or that sort of thing. But like I said, I keep it short, so if you guys have any questions. Oh, right, we have Compost Day. Actually, it formerly was called Compost Day if you've been here in the past. This year it's going to be Nutrient Management Day. It is August 13th. It'll be started at 9 and wrap up around 3. We're going to talk about containment pond management. We'll have a representative from Kline Irrigation. Lori from Barnes County Watershed, she'll be up here to talk about their gun. Anne Marie is going to talk about microbiology and have some cool kind of bacteria stuff. So we were talking about composting and manure composting, but there's another kind of composting. It's called mortality composting. How many of you guys compost your mortalities? How many bury? Yeah, okay. And so if you don't get to them soon enough, nature takes care of them themselves, or you bury them, or put them out on the rock pile, and then nature helps take care of them. What we do here at the Carrington REC is mortality composting. Okay, so similar to manure composting, except we don't turn it as often. So what we do is we start out with about a 2-foot base of straw, put that down, we put our deceased animal on top of there, put some manure on top just to give it a little nitrogen, a little bacteria kick, and then we cover the rest of it with about another 2 to 3 feet of straw. And we leave it stationary. After about, depending on how big the animal was when it goes in, 4 months for maybe a smaller yearling, maybe 6 months for a bigger cow or bull, we go and we try to lift it up and aerate it a little bit. Then we let it go back down, cover it with straw again, and let it continue to compost. So we did this down at the Streeter, or the Central Grasslands Research Extension Center in Streeter. We did this year with 11 newborn calves. And so we did just the process I told you. We put a big windrow of straw out, put those 11 calves on top of there, covered them with some fresh manure, and then covered them again with straw. We did that the 1st of May, and we went down and opened the piles at their field day last week, so July 8th. So that was about 8 weeks. We didn't find much when we opened those piles up. We found a few bones, a little bit of hide here and there, but for the most part, the calves were gone. So it's just another simple process. After everybody left that day, we did aerate the whole pile. We covered it with straw again, and I'm going to have the crew down there continue to take temperatures for us and see if we can get all the little ribs to go away. So just another part of composting. If you're interested in that, we'll also come out to your farm and do that with you. Doesn't have to be a big production. There doesn't have to be 30 people. You just need a tractor, some straw, a little bit of manure, and probably a dead animal.
Thank you, Mary and Emily. Good job. August 13th, you want to get a little more technical on compost, come on back. We'll have some demonstrations with live turning and all that other stuff.